Well, it took a little over 6 months, but I think it is safe to say that we have finally found a Fight of the Year contender for 2017. We've also found a Round of the Year contender, perhaps 2 rounds that are now contenders, all in the same fight. We're talking about the main event, Justin Gaethje versus Michael Johnson. Let me tell you, if you missed it, stop what you're doing right now. Pause this video, go watch it, come back, because you missed one of the best fights in recent memory. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani, back in Las Vegas alongside our own Marc Raimondi. That is Shaun Al-Shatti. The TUF 25 post-fight press conference just wrapped up here in Sin City. And Marc, let me start with you. Justin Gaethje defeats Michael Johnson in his UFC debut via second-round TKO. When I say Justin Gaethje versus Michael Johnson, just throw out the words that come to mind. The awesomeness, the amazingness. I make up words if you want. Tell us what comes to mind.
I don't know if the words have been created for this language to adequately describe what happened in that cage. It was epic and violent and everything in between. It was just madness. It was a rally. It was Gaethje coming back from getting knocked down, not quite knocked down, but rocked twice, and he really just. Every time he gets rocked, he comes back even harder. It's like his defense to getting rocked is not to shoot for a takedown. It's to just wing punches really, really hard at his opponent. And that's not something that you can plan for or prepare for. And after that kept on happening, Michael Johnson just couldn't stand that constant pressure of Gaethje just being in his grill for the entire fight. It was just 9 minutes of hell for Michael Johnson.
Shaun, often in these moments, immediately after great fights, we get a little emotional. And let's be honest, no one more so than you. You get very emotional after these fights.
Is
it? It is true. But that's why we love you.
Okay.
But here's the thing. Is it hyperbole when I say this was the fight of the year, the round of the year, the first, even the second? Was this as good as we're making it out to be?
No, that was the fight of the year. I don't think anybody would argue
Nothing's
that.
beating it. Could we give the award to them right now?
At this point, it's the fight of the year. I mean, who knows what happened? Maybe Justin Gaethje fights again in 2017. But my God, man, what the hell did we just watch? That dude is the god of war. That was unbelievable. I'm still speechless and I'm still jittery like hours after.
As I was saying.
Hey, man, I mean, that's the kind of fight that makes you like really just appreciate and remember why we love this sport. That dude, I mean, he's an Arizona guy, so I've been to a lot of Justin Gaethje fights. He always had the ability to make 800 people, 1,000 people sound like 10,000. Tonight, there were like maybe a couple thousand people in that arena. It was the emptiest I've seen the T-Mobile Arena. It sounded like 30,000 people were in that arena. It was amazing. I've never seen press row act like that. It was one of those situations where you just lose yourself, man. Like,
what was press row acting like?
We all looked like Chuck Liddell when we were watching
really?
the fight, just like unable to contain ourselves, man. At some point, you just become a kid again, and you're just watching some unbelievable spectacle play out in front of you, and it was breathtaking, man.
The beauty in this fight is that there was actually a lot of buzz going into it. They did a tremendous job of selling the fight, both Gaethje and Johnson. I think Gaethje, for a guy who had never fought in the UFC, did a really outstanding job in just promoting himself, and somehow it exceeded our expectations, I thought. I think a lot of people thought, okay, this is a perfect matchup. It's going to be fun. They're going to go toe-to-toe, both, very strong chins. I don't know if we expected that, right?
I think if you were a Gaethje watcher when he was with World Series of Fighting, you knew that to expect at least something like that, because that is kind of how Gaethje fights play out. This is how he fights. I mean, he's literally just going. It's all action. There's not a moment to even breathe or blink during a fight, because something ridiculous could happen at any moment, at any second, and often does. And Michael Johnson was the perfect foil for that, because not only is he an action fighter as well, but I mean, I think Michael Johnson is one of the top 5 or 10 lightweights in the world, right? I mean, I think most people would agree with that. He's certainly in the ranking somewhere, and he brought out even more of that in Justin Gaethje, and brought out the ability for him to come back and withstand really, really hard punches. I mean, we've seen Michael Johnson knock out Dustin Poirier with one punch. Dustin Poirier is one of the best in the world as well. So I mean, I thought it exceeded expectations, and I think it made Justin Gaethje a huge star tonight. I really do.
I agree with that as well. Shaun, you, as you mentioned, know Justin as well, if not better than most of the media here. His chin is something to behold. I mean, it is one of the most durable in MMA. And yet he said he wasn't really hurt in the fight, that he wasn't really rocked. Do you believe him? You've seen him before.
Sure.
He seemed rocked to me.
He seemed rocked to me, right? But I mean, that's, you look back at the Palomino fights, just all the various World Series of fighting, the Rich Petishnock fight way back in the day. That's just how he fights, man. At the end of the first, the first ends and he's in this rock state. He can barely make it back to his corner. By the beginning of the second round, 60 seconds past, he's doing jumping jacks, like getting the crowd back into it. It was unbelievable, man. He has a superhuman chin, and he aced every part afterwards too, where he gets on the mic and he doesn't even, it wasn't even a thing for him. He was just, who's next? I'm looking for my equal. That is such a great line.
Yeah.
And then he comes to the press conference and, I mean, again, he knew Conor McGregor tweeted about him, and Conor McGregor doesn't tweet about MMA these days, so it's catching the attention of everybody. I think he put the lightweight division on notice.
And also he delivered the headline of the year perhaps as well. I'm a promoter's wet dream, he said, and it's hard to argue with that. Let me quickly ask you also about that style and that chin. What I love about Justin Gaethje is that he says, look, I know I'm going to lose. I know I'm going to get knocked out, but hell, I'm going to keep going. How long can this last? Like, once you start to fight the upper echelon, will he at some point have to adapt his style?
I don't know that he's going to. I mean, this is a question he's faced for years at this point, even when he was the World Series of Fighting champion. But the thing about him, he is so incredibly self-aware, like to a degree that is very, very unusual for professional athletes, and in particular professional fighters, where this whole game is built on bravado and kind of puffing yourself up to a larger-than-life figure in your head. He's out here saying, I know I'm going to get knocked out. I know I'm going to lose. It's going to happen. He's unapologetic about that style, and it was interesting hearing kind of his plan in the post-fight press conference, where he says, I'm going to make myself into the money fight, and it's only going to take one or two more of those. And I think he's right. And at that point, once he gets to that spot, if this style can last another couple fights, and he keeps being successful, and he gets a couple really large paydays, at that point, he could probably leave and still be, have his faculties to some degree and be successful with it.
Yeah, he is a man on a mission, and so he said his plan is get the interim fight, which is kind of weird to hear, but I appreciate that he kind of understands the landscape right now, and then almost force Conor to fight him. And it's very clear that he wants to fight Tony Ferguson. Now, the plan up until 2 hours ago was Tony Ferguson versus Khabib. There are some other players out there. The original plan actually for tonight, for Gaethje's debut, was Edson Barbosa. Barbosa injured, so they put in Michael Johnson. There's also Kevin Lee, who's looked very good. People throwing out Poirier and Eddie Alvarez. Let's play Sean Shelby here. Let's play matchmaker. If you're looking at Justin Gaethje and how amazing he fought tonight and the potential there, what do you do with him next?
Man, there are so many, there are just so many thoughts in my head about this division and how great it is, and I'm just thinking, I'm imagining Justin Gaethje versus X, Justin Gaethje versus this guy, Justin Gaethje versus this guy, and it's all good. I mean, he wants Tony Ferguson, he said, and I don't know if I can quite wrap my brain around how ridiculous that fight could be. So when he said that, I was like, okay, I need to see this right now. Let's just do that. But of course, the rankings are going to possibly get in the way with Khabib being in there. Wouldn't have a problem with the Kevin Lee. Wouldn't have. I know that Alvarez and Poirier might go again after the controversial finish to their last fight, but man, pencil Justin Gaethje in against that folding chair over there, and I think it would be an exciting fight.
Yeah, Barbosa as well, I think, is a fight that a lot of people were excited about. Kevin Lee as well, I think, would make a lot of sense. Okay, let's move along to the co-main event, because you said something that, in my opinion, perfectly describes how I feel about what happened in the co-main event. You said moments ago that the Gaethje fight reminded you about kind of why you love the sport. Yeah. What happened tonight with Jesse Taylor reminded me why I love this sport so much. Jesse Taylor, the guy who made it to the finals of The Ultimate Fighter Season 7, who never got that shot in the finals because he acted a fool after the show wrapped, did get a shot in the UFC, and it didn't really amount to anything, and was released shortly thereafter, comes back on the 25th season, the redemption season, makes it to the finals, behaves properly, and then wins tonight, submits Diego Lima, second round, rear naked choke, wins $290,000, and in a beautiful moment afterwards saying, look, what I want to do with the money is, start a college fund for my kids and invest it. I mean, this guy is all grown up. He fought all over the world. There was some, I can't really describe the emotion, and I'm hoping you can help me. I felt nostalgic to the sort of simpler days of the UFC on Spike TV. It felt innocent. It felt beautiful. It was a guy that we had seen kind of grow up. It was really one of my favorite moments covering the sport. And again, that is no hyperbole, at least for me.
Yeah, and I think the descriptor you just used was very accurate. Innocent. it felt so innocent, and we rarely get those kind of moments in MMA. In sports, this is one of those type of stories that you get in sports that ever so often that are just truth is stranger than fiction type of thing. This guy could have quit so many different times, man. 9 years, like almost a decade of trying to just climb back to this mountaintop, and no one would have begrudged him if he stopped at any point in the road. He's fought all across the world, virtually like every country you can think of, every organization you could think of, all these like weird named organizations. He lost his last fight before he went into the Ultimate Fighter. And now to see this, it truly is just an incredible moment. To see something come full circle. I mean, Jesse Taylor just collapsed after the finish. Like, he more or less just collapsed in his corner and like couldn't contain himself. And it seemed overwhelming for him, and everyone around kind of was just soaking it in with him. It was a very nostalgic moment.
And it also, in my opinion, validates the 25th season of The Ultimate Fighter. Look, I'm not going to lie. I think most of us agree that that show has run its course. But for this guy, of all the people on the show, it wouldn't have been the same if James Krause won. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't have been the same if Tom Galicchio won or even Diego Lima. For this guy who made it to the finals and was pulled to come and get in the finals and win it, again, you can't write something better than that if you're the show's producers. It some ways gives the show a couple more legs, if you get what I'm saying. That's how I feel.
It does. It kind of gives it new life, and I don't know if the ratings will bear that out, but it's certainly... this season was, he set it up there when he found out this was going to happen. He said, this season was made for me. Yeah. And how many times does it happen in sports where it's kind of set up for that one person? We've seen it many times in MMA where it seems like it's going to go a certain way, and it's the storyline is there and it's easy and it never goes the way it's supposed to go. And it did this in this case. He was the guy that was supposed to win that show. This was the season really for Jesse Taylor. He was the poster boy for mishaps and what could have been. And he came back and he did it. And the word that you used was innocent. I would say it's an earnest thing. It's in a world that we're promoting, you know, one of the best boxers of all time against a guy who's never had a pro boxing fight, and people are trying to hype that as a legitimate athletic contest, and it's going to be competitive. And then they're trying to sell that to us. This was a real thing. This was a real thing that Jesse Taylor went through. He was living a few years ago on the beach in San Diego. He didn't have a home. He was homeless, and he told me that he was getting bitten by the bugs at night, so he couldn't do that anymore. So he had to go crash at a friend's place. This is real life stuff. I don't want to use the word stuff. I want to use another word. But in a world where everything is kind of processed, this was the real deal.
Yeah, as media, I think that we can often be jaded, especially covering this sport, because there are so many events and they all blend in together. And let's be honest, you know, this card at times dragged a little bit, but to see that moment and this guy, I mean, I remember that footage, that security cam footage they showed of him when he's like stumbling in the casino after TUF 7 wrap and he's breaking the windows, and to see him of all people, JT Money, come back and win this, really one of the nicest stories, at least of this year and in my opinion in the last few years. Let me ask you about another big story that happened tonight, Marc Gaethje losing, and I don't know if a lot of people thought he would lose. You picked him to lose.
I did.
You picked your guy from Arizona, Drakkar Klose, to win this fight, and Marc Gaethje really ruffled his feathers all week long. I mean, Brad Tavares told us in the scrum backstage that Gaethje sat right next to Klose at the fighters meeting after the weigh-ins yesterday and said, "I'm going to knock you out." I mean, this guy is not short on confidence, but Klose kind of put a clinic out there. I mean, he really shocked a lot of people. I was surprised as well. I did not think that Klose would be able to do that. Why were you confident that he would be able to derail the hype train that is Marc Gaethje?
It seems like that's what the MMA lab is starting to get a reputation for, man, these prospect killers. Drakkar Klose is a guy that John Crouch and all of the coaches within that team have been very high on for a long time. And he finally got his shot earlier this year against Devin Powell, who was also gaining some hype. And now he comes in here and he kind of really did make a statement for himself, because he was a very good prospect. He's been touted as a good prospect. And to see him come out, and I think the fire afterwards, people were getting kind of upset about what he was doing, but it was like, man, this guy was getting prodded the entire week by Gaethje, who was getting very personal at virtually every moment they were together. Like, at some point, you have to let that emotion come out. It was a standout performance, and I think he let a lot of people know who he was. Was
Gaethje exposed, or was it just a bad night? He, you know, the leg kicks derailed him. I mean, do you feel as high on him as you did 6 or 7 hours ago?
Probably not, but he's still a young kid. And as Shaun was saying, Klose in some circles was looked at as just as big of a prospect as Gaethje was at the MMA lab, and that's obviously a very respected camp. And when John Crouch says something, you do listen as an MMA reporter. So I don't think certainly Gaethje is not he's not done. It's, he'll come back, and I think he'll have a really good career. He may even be in title contention one day, but Drakkar Klose is that guy. I mean, he actually reminds me of a little bit of another Michigan guy in the UFC, Mike Perry, a little bit kind of like a smaller version with just his swagger, not with his knockout power, that kind of thing, but just with his swagger and his confidence. He really seems to have unbridled confidence, and he took Gaethje completely out of his game tonight.
There's something in that water in Michigan, and I'm not talking about Flint.
No,
What I want to say is Kevin Lee. He reminds me of Kevin Lee as well, right? I mean, those Michigan guys are really guys. Don't get all of. What I'm trying to say is they do have a lot of confidence. Those guys. No, you don't like.
No, I thought Kevin Lee a few weeks ago was fantastic. The controversial stoppage to that fight notwithstanding, he looked incredible, and I think that he is a guy that's going to go far, and that's Michigan swagger.
Yeah. Okay. Before we wrap up, there were some nice performances tonight. Jared Cannonier showed a lot of heart. That was a fun performance. James Krause with a nice victory. Angela Hill with a strong performance. Let's not forget about Tisha Torres picking up her first stoppage win in the UFC. Gray Maynard. Anyone else that you want to spotlight before we say goodbye?
There were a couple really nice performances to see. I mean, Jared Cannonier, he gets a nice rebound fight. And at times, it was almost like he was playing with his food in there. Like, it was a very interesting fight to watch. He was making all kinds of crazy, motions with his hands and his eye. He was doing this with his eyes a lot while walking forward. It was very unsettling watching very close cage side. But Tisha Torres stuck out to me. I mean, she was going to be the curtain jerker. She got moved up because of the last second removal from the card. But to see her get her first ever career finish and the way that she did it, that very slick back take off that takedown attempt, and then just the overflooding of emotion that kind of came out of her as her and her fiance, Raquel Pennington, just embraced in the octagon. It was a very nice moment.
What about you? Anyone you want to shout out, spotlight here?
A few people, like Shaun said, Angela Hill is someone who hasn't gotten a UFC win since Emily Kagan in the finale of her season of The Ultimate Fighter. James Krause had a kind of a tough fight because he was fighting a guy that he roomed with in the house this season, Tom Galicchio, and there's a big Galicchio crowd, and he got booed, and Angela Hill got booed because they were fighting people who the crowd was going for, but they both had really good performances.
Yeah, I do want to shout out Gray Maynard, who, I mean, we talk about Justin Gaethje and how high we are on him right now. Here's a guy who ended up jerking the current tonight against Teruto Ishihara. He defeats him, in my opinion, his best performance since UFC 118 against Kenny Florian. I mean, think about how long ago that was. And in just a few months' time, yes, Boston, in just a few months' time, a man who he will always be linked to, Frankie Edgar, is about to fight probably for the belt at 145 against Max Holloway. And so here is Gray Maynard on that long road back to a title shot. He says he's confident. He says he's back. We'll see. But it was just fascinating to see him really, I think, kind of fighting on his last legs after that performance against Ryan Hall to get back on track, show his dominance, bring out the wrestler in him once again, and let's see what happens to him at 145. So there were some fun things to take in this evening at the TUF 25 finale. None funner, though, than Justin Gaethje in the main event. Again, if you missed it, if you decided to watch this entire post-fight show without watching it, now say goodbye to us and watch that fight. One of the very best in recent memory, and without a doubt, as of right now, July 8, 2017, it's the best fight of 2017. There's no doubt about that. I don't care what you say. Nothing has been better than that thus far up until this point. Guess what? There's more to come. In less than 24 hours, it's UFC 213. Maybe we'll top it. For now, though, we're not topping it, so enjoy it. Go back, watch it 3 more times, and then get ready for UFC 213. We appreciate you sticking with us all week long in Las Vegas. There's more to come on Saturday, so get your rest, and we'll see you right back here Saturday night after UFC 213. Good night.